City School District will provide each student an opportunity for a lifetime of success, and a mission statement of Claymont City School District creates an environment that nurtures, develops, and empowers each student. Our next regular meeting is September 9th at 6 p.m. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I get a motion and a second to approve with our motion or no addendums.
I motion.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Grandison,
Yes.
Mrs. Host, Mrs. Wolf. Did you say yes?
What
Or no?
What are you? No corrections.
So there's no corrections or addendums.
Oh, that's what's up.
We're voting for none. Okay,
No, usually.
yeah, then.
There's something to skip that.
Doing.
It's all good.
It's
Okay.
Can I get a motion to second to approve the meeting agenda?
So moved.
That's what we just did.
Second.
Roll call. I messed up.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison.
Yes.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf.
Yes.
If you would all please stand, we want to have a moment of silence for one of our high school teachers that we lost this summer in a tragic accident. But this, if you would please. Thank you. And at this time, I would like to present Ken Lazier, his diploma from Claymont High School. Ken went off to service and was unable to graduate from Claymont High School. So we are glad that Ken is here tonight. We want to congratulate him on receiving his high school diploma. And so, Ken, we have your diploma here, and Mrs. Wolf and everybody else will congratulate you as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to highlight a video that Jacob Baldwin and his students submitted for the Ohio School Safety Center Summit, which was held a couple weeks ago, and they won the most creative video for busing.
What would you say? Busing.
Busing.
Before I stop, buckle up and listen. For safety, that is a mission. You gotta pay attention when we're going around. Maybe for the town, but we gotta stay safe from a bus now. Never back at tight, full of when you're like in the morning and you come home that night to the bus stop, out the driver's waiting and check in. Sleep out on hesitating. If there's an emergency, we'll all be prepared. You always just in the most prepared. First out, feel like I'm gonna make it through. Well, big city is all about you. The first out, feel like I'm gonna make it through. Well, big city is all about you. Well, big city is all about us. Baby. Bus, baby. Soon bus safety is away, baby. Bus, baby. Bus, baby. Now hold on tight, ride safely with me. Jump on the bus, it's not some jail, driving cops, it's never seen away. I was bigger, but I don't want to.
So congratulations. And principals, that might be a good one to show for bus safety, training. So, we appreciate that. One other item I just wanted to, Gemma Dotts would like to thank the Claymont Board of Education for her Claymont Board of Education scholarship. She's a recent graduate of Claymont High School and it thanks the board for the scholarship. And she will be going to pursue a degree in animal sciences.
At the Ohio State University.
Administrative reports. Do we have any OPCCEA? Okay.
Buckeye has new teacher orientations today and tomorrow. We have 15 new teachers at Buckeye this year. Our enrollment, as of today was a little over 1,100. And we'll see if that holds once school starts, so. Making progress.
Have a little bit longer of a report today. That's going to pull up the PowerPoint.
Can you move the mic?
State of Ohio. The state of Ohio has asked for schools to be more transparent with the way we use our federal funds. So we are going to go through today and I'm going to give you a summary of our federal budget, Title I all the way to ICA, and talk to you about where we're spending our money. And then this presentation is going to be placed on our website and opening it up for public comment to see if anybody has some feedback with the way we spend our funds. Should I turn it on? Maybe I'm too far away. Maybe. Okay. The first one is our Title I-A. It's about improving basic programs. The purpose is to ensure that all children have a fair, equal, significant opportunity to obtain a high quality education and reach at minimum proficiency on the state academic content standards. As you see at the top, we have an allocation amount of $478,179.28. I have a bar graph there on the side. Majority of those funds are in salaries and fringes for the public school district. There's a small portion that we're required to give to the non-public in salaries and fringes services. And then we have some funds in purchase services and supplies. That doesn't tell you anything. So I'm going to go to the next page and that'll tell you more specifically. The 6 ladies at the top are the teachers' salaries and fringes that are paid through Title I funds. The majority of our money goes to salaries and the benefits for our staff. In purchase services, we set aside $20,000 in ESC support. That is around 40 days of service for somebody to come into our school district to support. Last year, we used that money for Chase Rosser, who came in and supported Nick Wright at the elementary building and sat in and worked with the BLT, the TBT groups. OG licenses, there is now an online digital subscription that our teachers entitled like to use when they're providing intervention services. So I've set aside some funds to pay for those licenses. And then Title I meetings and conferences, that is a lot of money there. $13,800. We won't spend that money probably. Usually when there's a Title I conference, I'm the only one that goes. Twice a year, we're required to send somebody. There's a multitude of sessions to go to at any one moment in time, and I can't attend all of those. So I would like to have other either title teachers or maybe even building administrators. There's even sections in there for special ed, so other people may need to attend to the conference. So we can hear more of what is important in the state of Ohio rather than just me trying to pick the ones that I felt are most relevant. So I set aside some funds for that purpose. Supplies, we're required to spend a certain amount of our money for family engagement. And we put aside $7,603.95. That is split up between our three title buildings, which are primary, elementary, and intermediate. And I split that up based on ADM, the enrollment. And I've set aside 7,000 is going to be split up among the schools, and $603.95 I set aside for supply costs for putting together the annual reading festival table that we do in the first Saturday in November at the new town hall. So anybody has an interest in helping create that nice little table, I would appreciate that. That's something that our title teachers in the past have helped with. I've kind of talked my sister into helping a couple years ago. A lot of times I've done it by myself, and it's not fun to be there by yourself all day. I'd like to have some teachers that are in there engaging and getting to see the kids that are coming through. We're required to set aside some homeless money. I've put $3,000 aside for services with enrollment costs for hygiene products, school supplies, transportation, if we have to pay for transportation to keep that child here in our school of origin. Our Title I teachers had asked for decodable readers for their intervention, so there's some funds for that. And then, as I said earlier, we're required to service our non-public, which is Immaculate Conception. And we have $8,000 to provide services to them, and they have 10% of that money, $80 for family engagement. That's Title I. Ooh. Title II is all about supporting effective instruction. The purpose of this grant is to increase student achievement consistent with, again, the academic standards, to improve the quality and effectiveness of teachers, principals, and other school leaders, and increase the number of teachers, principals, and other school leaders who are effective in improving those student academic achievement, and provide low-income and minority students with greater access to those effective teachers, principals, and school leaders. We have $87,916.12. And let's see there in the pie graph where we're spending our money. It'll be easier to read here. $28,691.50 goes towards curriculum and assessment resources. That's our Rubicon Atlas curriculum mapping service, as well as our NWPA map assessment services, which we give those tests 3 times a year. We use those results of those tests to look at what students need and what intervention services to provide. Again, we have an EFC coach that's going to be helping originally. That was our letters training. I don't think they have somebody that funds that, so most likely that might be a carryover for next year, unless we find something else that we need to spend that money on. Subs costs for letters training for each module that our teachers take with letters. We give them 2 days of release time so that they can work on the 16 plus hours of modules or 12 plus hours of modules that come between each of the face-to-face units. So $10,000 is not going to be enough to cover that. So perhaps the cost that we had set aside for the ESC coach will help cover that instead. We have a math consultant, Kai Davis, coming in, again, working specifically with K, with kindergarten. It's going to cost us $8,000 this year. Other staff training expenses, we have a lot of those teachers that do not fall into a category that we provide professional development for here. For example, our art teachers, our music teachers, some of our career tech teachers, we can't possibly bring enough PD in to make it more specific for them. So often they go out and go to conferences or trainings or workshops of their own. Guidance counselors are included in that as well. UDL training, and we're bringing that in. We had a training last year, which during COVID, we had a training planned. And because we all went online, they did an online training and we had some money that they told us got money set aside because we couldn't provide the training we wanted. So we used that last year and the training, we had lots of great feedback from the teachers. Part of that in the half day, I think there were like 12 people in that training. They said, everybody needs to hear this. So everybody's going to have the opportunity to hear that at our grades 4 and 5 conference for our second grade that did the letters training prior to this year. As UDL stands for Universal Design for Learning. The belt giving the students the opportunity for choice of how they learn, how they're going to present what they know. Non-public PE, they get $5,147 or whatever they choose to do with their money. And then map training, we have another map training scheduled this year again, because of some positive feedback we had last year from some of the half-day sessions we provided that were choices for staff. Teacher said everybody needs to hear this. This was a great training, so we're bringing that back for everybody, and that's going to be done on the 21st of August for
Non-public, that would be the back of the section.
non-public St. Mary's. Title IV, we got 59,000 this year. A lot more than we had in the past. The three purposes of this fund are to support well-rounded education, activities that support health and safe and healthy schools, and activities to support the effective use of technology. We have to spend a certain percentage in each one of those areas. Leader and Me pretty much takes up, we could count Leader and Me at all three of those areas. They help our students learn how to be safe and how they make good choices. Well-rounded education helps with their achievement, and also there's a technology to Leader and Me. So in the past, we've used all of our money for that. This year, Leader and Me doesn't cost as much as we're on a maintenance agreement with them now. So show you exactly what we're spending. Everybody wants to there's some extras. All right. So 12,272.62 applies to support our STEM and EIS activities. So that's going to be given to our teachers. We haven't had that money before, so our principals, we talked about this at our last week's meeting. They were pretty pumped that they were going to have some money for that. $10,000 goes to the Leader and Me digital platform and resources. That's hitting the technology piece. $24,865 is the Leader and Me coaching and maintenance. This is also paying for the Visit You badge system. So when you go into the schools and you have to scan your license, we bought that with ESSER money. So because it wasn't paid with general money, we could pay for it with a different grant. So this will pay for the annual costs from now on. We'll use Title IV money for that. And it's 89, like I said, 25. And then the non-public Immaculate Conception has told me they want to buy a security system. They don't have enough right now, so we are helping them blend some of the money. They didn't spend some of the money last year. They're carrying over that money. Once that carryover happens in late October, we're going to add that money to what they got this year to help fund their security system. Title V, this is money we have because of our poverty situation here. Again, it's a larger amount than we've seen here in the past, $67,902.64. This is to address the challenges that rural districts face: diverse curriculum, parent involvement, teacher recruitment, retention, professional development, and education, technology infrastructure, and access. So what we're doing with that money, we have a career navigator that is coming in that's going to be spent $40,000 of this budget for that. That person is going to be helping our students, especially at the high school, learn or gain access to graduation through alternate pathways rather than just graduating with the tests that most students do. So they will be going through apprenticeship options. Our middle school and high school don't receive parent engagement funds with Title I because that is only for Title I served schools. So I'm using some of this funds to give them some money for parent engagement activities. We've had a teacher express some interest after some of the STEM activities we did last year with a drone program, drone racing. He attended, or actually two of them had attended training or information meeting last year. And Mrs. Khan put in a time in the daily schedule for the drone classes. So we set aside $33,000 to help fund that program. Administrative training and meeting expenses. We've set aside a lot of money for our teachers to go to PD. Our administrative team has not in the past been given funds to go to meetings or to improve themselves through workshops and conferences. So I've set aside about $1,000 for each administrator to better themselves, to grow their own professionalism. And then any costs that we have here for our administrative team. And then continuing with what we started last year with STEM programming, we set aside almost $5,900 for our K-5 buildings to do STEM activities.
Did we use this last year for the career navigator?
Yes.
We did.
We actually had another grant called Expanding Opportunities that helped fund that career navigator as well. We haven't seen that money come in. Usually it gets thrown in late July.
Okay.
We do have carryover money coming from that, so we're gonna have a little bit of more funds to mess with, but yeah, I don't know if Expanding Opportunities is going away, because we're not any richer or
No.
wealthier now than we were last year, so.
I remembered hearing that to pay for career navigator, came a good portion through grant money, so. I
Yeah, we
just
used
wanted
two
to
different
connect
grants
the dots.
last year to pay, and we've got, the intent is to pay for some of the money comes from this budget, and the other will come from the carryover that we have from last year. This is Heather's section. I know she does something always at the end of the year. I'm putting it at the front of the year as well. She might do another one at the end of the year. Kind of to tell you ahead of time what we're looking at spending that money on, and then she'll come back and tell you what we actually spent the money on. $497,800+ for our special ed, and it's to support the needs of students with disabilities in our district. And you will see a lot of that goes to salaries, again, fringe benefits for our aides and some of our teachers. And those teachers have to sign off every year, twice a year, I think, that they are, so they acknowledge that they're being paid with this fund. Purchase services. We have two school psychologists. One's paid out of our general funds. The second school psychologist is Ashley Hostetler. Half or part of her salary, $30,000, comes from this grant. The other half comes out of general, but we started doing this, we hired her, we had a $25,000 grant for behavior, and we took $30,000 out of this money, so it paid for the majority of hers. We don't have the behavior grant anymore, but at least we're still paying for part of her salary out of this budget. Raleigh is that digital platform that they use to document their services. OG licenses, our special ed students, their teachers, just like our title teachers, like to use the digital platform, so set money aside for purchasing those subscriptions. And evaluation services, I put $5,000 in. We will probably use that. There's been a couple years we've not used any evaluation costs. That means an outside company comes in and works and evaluates a student. Last year, we got hit at the very end of the year and we didn't have it budgeted, so we had to spend that out of general fund, but this is a new student, potentially new evaluation costs. So we've got $5,000 budgeted for that. And then non-public services, what we've paid for with our non-public money is speech and language services to Immaculate Conception. They've got a significant increase. It was around, I think, 12 to 14,000 last year. And so now they've got $19,468. All right, and I think this is the last one, early childhood special education. We got an allocation of 19,813.04. The purpose of this grant is to support the same thing as IDA regular, but this is to support the preschool students that have disabilities. How we are using that money, as you see, a purchase service, bar and supplies. We are using and have used for the last several years, the majority of that money to hire an additional aide. I'm sure you've heard the phone calls or maybe the complaints from parents that when we have somebody calling off at our preschool, we don't have somebody to cover, we've had to close the preschool because there is a student to staff ratio requirement you must maintain. And if we don't have the staff, we have to close. So this is our attempt. I don't know how many years ago we started this.
At least two.
It's been more than, I think it's been like 4 or 5 years, I think.
Time
Yeah.
flies, but-
She said at least.
Yeah, at least two, I know.
So this was our attempt to try to not have to close. And I think Heather at one time, several times has stepped in, myself has stepped in, and we've covered classes. So we didn't have to close because our parents, that causes an undue hardship on them. So 18,000 of that does pay for the additional substitute aid. That person also has a substitute teaching license, so they can step in if the teacher's out. They can step in if an aide is out, and they can provide the services for our kids. And then we set aside $1,500 for preschool special ed supplies, and I think that this year is purchasing another changing table. So that's gonna happen here soon. All right, so again, thank you for viewing or listening to me. We're gonna put this out on the website hopefully tomorrow and open it up for public comment in case somebody else has a better idea of how to spend our monies than what we're doing now. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jody.
Thanks. That was a nice presentation.
So, as that we get to one, try to get an update for the summer projects and, activities. At your desk, I gave a copy I just received from that board. You may remember that came to one of our board meetings. So that's the report I received later this afternoon. But what we have now is the installation of conduit at the end of the corners. Now, he says that they are looking at our next level. Next thing on the list is to backfill the main trench in the array area with in construction of the equipment pad, and they're working with Gessner Paving to asphalt repair as soon as possible. So another. Then during the month of July, Richard Estimating was out working on the high school drainage issues. And there's some pictures there that you can see where they cut through the creek, made a swale between the cornfield and the beans, and the fan field. They opened up the creek beds that were that leaded to a lot of line, they leaded to the Bell Road area that there to the creek river. We haven't had much rain. Good point of it, we hadn't had much rain is they've allowed to get in there and do a lot of work. They weren't getting stuck with the equipment. The rain we have had seemed to dissipate pretty quickly through the swales. That has helped. Just very good on that versus like well spent. Wasn't a lot of money. Better that we can see. The school-based health center, where we are with that, we had a request for qualifications. We had a short list. The short list was down to Beaver Constructors and also Robertson Construction out of Keith. We went through the rubric as far as the request for qualifications. We had to have 3 companies put in for qualifications. We sent it to Beaver and to Robertson. They came back and we're currently have an intent to work with Beaver instructors with the health-based clinic. They gave, as it says there, they gave some proposals. One of them, they would start before Christmas time and finish up by the end of August. The other in the fall, the initial plan would work through to October. The expedited is actually less expensive than the other project, so they want to get that moving. That is through the affiliation initiative that we help base that. So it's moving along pretty quickly. So it's next board meeting, we would have to work on an agreement with Beavers to do that first stage of design. Then after the design, go into the actual look at the. I believe the overall budget proposal for the expedite was under $300,000. Considering we got a grant for almost $1.9 million, that helps the other piece and parts of the construction. It basically that kind of economic thing that is all I can add. And involved building work. I'm going through the buildings right now, there's some finishing touches. The custodians are putting on their buildings. And floor, they're not all waxed. And they're just putting it away. Our maintenance and our custodians each and every year. They work very, very hard. They take a lot of pride in what they do. And I want to thank them for that. That they are speaking.
Get all the presentations out of the way. What do you want to wait? Oh, yeah. Mhm. Hey, we finished our first month already of the new fiscal year. It's just a PDF, so. So general fund, so 8% would be where the budgeted would be. We're at 6.03%. The state has not reconfigured taking into that account the CEPs. I think that happens like September, October, where they get the new enrollment numbers and stuff, and then they start making the changes. So, I mean, we're getting the funding because it just moves from restricted to unrestricted or unrestricted back to restricted once the CEP goes. Second half property taxes, I say will be received in August. I actually go pick them up tomorrow. In the expense category, we're at 5.18%, so we're lower than 8% also. 86.8% was related to salaries and benefits, and we did observe the insurance holiday in July. So total revenues so far for the fiscal year is $1.3 million with total expenses of 1.2. So we had a surplus of $157,000 with a true days cash of almost 120 days. Still winding down on our ESSER 3 funds. We only had $5,846 of supplies, which we had purchased some a couple more ViewSonic boards for the high school. We have $17,000 left in outstanding purchase orders with an outstanding balance to, we're still figuring out what to do with it of $6,600. So we've got a couple things in mind that we discussed just this week. So we'll finalize those ones. So in July, we had almost $188,000 that I sought reimbursements for from state and federal programs, which left an ending fund balance of $8.5 million. Go ahead. In all of our funds. And I did add, Martha had asked a couple times, like, where's this compared from other years? So I kind of threw this one in, just looking at like the last 10 years. The bottom line is the general fund, and the top line is our total fund balance. So there was a couple years, like fiscal year 16, that's when there was like $1 million that they had gotten a loan on when they did some capital projects, when the turrets came down from over here and a couple different things. So that's why there's a little bit of a blurb in that one. And then fiscal years, like you went from 20 to 21, you know, we had to jump. That's when we started collecting the monies for the stadium project. And then we went through a couple years of rifts, so that brought in line. But as you can kind of see, the span between general funds and overall funds have kind of, you know, kept that same distance, and then we're kind of leveled out the last several years then again. So I just wanted to give that visual to help you out. There's any questions on those?
The Ohio School Board Conference is coming up. It'll be November 10th to 12th. One of the, if there's any attendees that might be interested, and if we have several members that are interested in attending, that is a Sunday to Tuesday. And that would involve using a board meeting for that we have, that would like to go. And we've had some, you know, those who want 2 or 3 people, with board members who might like to. Calendars and vacation days and how that would all. That will be held at the convention center with Greater Columbus Convention Center on High Street. If you let him know
Yeah.
by
Soon, registration's open, and but then housing opens usually about the second week of September.
housing, you get one, if closed, you take the water. If closed, if not closed, then walking distance, and you're shuttling yourself from several blocks away, so they do find things. It's nice to walk across the street. And then downtown. But, you know, you are interested in one.
Can I get a motion in a second to approve the following treasurer items?
So good.
So there's the financial reports for July, and the payment of bills of July. There's a list included. There's 2 board meetings, the regular board meeting of July 8th and the special board meeting of July 10th. I need to do a transfer of some funds, $9,768 from the general fund back to the athletic fund. There was a distribution that I caught after I closed the year that should have been coming from the general fund that came from the athletic. So I need to give Justin back some money. There was a then and now certificate, and then the federal program budgets that Jody had just gone over with us. Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Peters.
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison, Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf. Thank you.
Can I get a motion in a second to approve the following superintendent?
So moved.
I'll second it.
And items that your client put out, A, B, would be to accept the resignation of Trudy Tuttle that is effective for 10 July. To fill Trudy's position, appointing Kelly Carroll as a social worker at Step Zero basketball this coming school year. You have some people who are classified, and we have a 90-day probationary period that's effective the 19th of August. Spencer Gilbert, you get the elementary 2-hour custodian, Coach Bell, you get the high school, storming the ball, and then you will get 3. That Spencer custodian, those are the custodian, forming the Lawrence School, high school ISS. Elena Montini would be our preferred sub-custodian for this coming school year. She would have a rate of $50 an hour. Yeah, we've already hired the first side school that's coming through here. The one we have, this one, we just get more of that $150 a day. We have some non-athletic supplementals. That's characterized. Yes, the resident educator assignments for this coming school year. B2 has 30 new people starting in our district. Here's one, Carl Rice, Rice Table, Ryan Hall, for Allison, really important that. And we have year 2, we have Madeline Williamson, and then also we have several substitutes. They work on trying to find substitutes. One thing we are having difficulty is the biggest thing is everybody else, the hand bus drivers. So anybody's interested in their bus driver solution. That's the else will have to go through the classes. We're already at the point that we already have to pay several athletic drivers. Through the following nursing students that are being days to be monitored, mentored by Courtney Cameron. Courtney said they're going to in like one day. We're learning how to there are volunteers for the marching band. That's listed. We have our DEC committee members, the administrators for the EDC. That's good as well. This is Miles talking about non-public funds and immaculate conception our auxiliary funds. So they deployed Gina Ditto as a prevention specialist at $30 an hour, not to exceed $30,000 a year. Trina Pauling as a reading specialist, $21 per hour, not to exceed $50,000. We had a quote for LinkedIn solutions for replacing people with gas tanks and bus garages. Figure board update, you figured that a few years ago. We kind of warned about our bus tanks that we had to do some upgrades to that. They really wanted a lot more done than what we were able to do. We had to put the automatic shutoffs, and that wasn't an issue. But then the diesel tank has to be. So if you're replacing these tanks, we find is all the car and lunch prices. Have those, but student breakfasts and lunches are free under the CEP. Now, my kids in middle school, they always want more money because they want an extra sandwich or whatever else. That extra has to be. That's the only time. We had the bus route for this coming school year, and also we have the memorandum of understanding regarding supplementals.
So, can we have discussion? Go ahead, Martha.
I have a question. So the nursing student candidates, where are they schooling? Is that? Okay.
So, and then sorry. So on the lunches, the a la carte pricing, those are the only extras that we offer, right? I mean, it's like a list, so.
Everybody, get one extra water.
Yeah.
One extra sandwich, like that.
Okay, now, are they able to, is that cash or do they have to put it on an account at the school? Like,
I've seen it go through both.
no, for us, do we have, does it matter for Claymont?
As part of reimbursement.
As far as if I have a kid who wants to go through the line, and can he pay cash or does he have to have an on account?
Well, they can pay cash, or their parents can send it in and have it on their account already,
So either
so.
way.
yeah.
Okay, somebody asked me, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because back a while ago, it's all on, you had to have. an
Right, so
account.
so if they still have some on an account from last year, that could carry over to this year and they could use it for the a la carte stuff.
And then just to make sure, those non-athletics, this is a lot of those, multi people, right? So with the union that was agreed with, the MOU?
I was with, our attorney on Thursday, and he talked about with, this color being recommended to CEA. And then verbally approved it.
Okay, so there's a lot of that, and then. Although Mrs. Cotton is here, it looks like all the musical, vocal, choreographer, instrumental, scenic, and stage. So those will all just be Mrs. Cotton. Okay. I'm done, Madam President.
Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Peters.
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf.
Next item is separated out, for athletic purposes. And we have item two, Eric Peterson, former Steve Eric's cross country this coming school year. You had athletic ticket prices that were in the packets and also the athletic pack prices. We have people being paid a minimum wage for this coming school year to work sporting events. They folks are listed from Claymont ticket takers. We do have some volunteers for this coming school year. That's a short list. They all, and then we have some total supplemental. Amanda Wall, with junior high cross country, Alexandria Edwards, the head softball coach, and Carl Snell, faculty.
Can I get a motion in a second? For those items?
So moved.
I'll second.
I have a question. What does the faculty manager do?
Like an assistant dean. So, one large part of it is like football, games, volleyball games, they're all Friday, and it's something with those games, freshman games, baby games.
Roll call.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Same.
and Mrs. Wolf.
Talking about the single items. So. the Motion and a second to approve credit coach for DEC for this coming school year.
Second. Go ahead. I have a question. What is JDTC?
Joint evaluation district.
Thank you. Still learning all the.
Roll call.
Mrs. Wolf, Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yeah.
and Mrs. Host.
Staying.
Sorry, I skipped you.
Does he get paid for that? Just so I know for future reference.
Yes. He did.
Motion and a second to approve, city host and volunteer ticket for the school year.
So moved.
Second. Which one? Oh, okay, I got those. Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison,
Yes.
Mrs. Host,
I abstain.
Mr. Peters, and Mrs. Wolf.
And approve those things for volunteer ticket for.
I make a motion. I'll second.
Ms. Campbell,
Yes.
Mrs. Host,
Yes.
Mrs. Grandison, Mr. Peters, and Mrs. Wolf.
Second.
6:50.
I just wanted to vote now. Huh?